30-е заседание Совета Безопасности объявляется открытым. Предварительная повестка дня данного заседания гласит: ситуация в отношении Западной Сахары. Повестка дня утверждается. Совет Безопасности приступает к рассмотрению пункта 2 повестки дня. Я хотел бы обратить внимание членов Совета на документ С-2025-612, в котором содержится доклад Генерального секретаря о ситуации в отношении Западной Сахары. На рассмотрении членов Совета находится документ С-2025-692, в котором содержится текст проекта резолюции, представленного Соединенными Штатами Америки. Совет готов приступить к голосованию по представленному на его рассмотрение проекту резолюции. Я ставлю проект резолюции на голосование. Прошу голосующих за проект резолюции, содержащийся в документе С-2025-692, поднять руку. Против? Воздержавшиеся? За резолюцию проголосовало 11 членов Совета, против ни одного, при 3 воздержаниях. 1 член Совета не участвовал в голосовании. Проект резолюции принимается в качестве резолюции 2797-2025. Сейчас я предоставляю слово тем членам Совета, которые хотели бы выступить с заявлением после голосования. Я представляю слово представителю Соединенных Штатов.
Thank you, Mr. President. The United States welcomes today's historic vote, which seizes upon this unique moment and builds on the momentum for a long, long overdue peace in Western Sahara. We commend Personal Envoy de Mistura and his vital diplomatic efforts and recognize the UN's key role in creating a new era of peace and prosperity for the region. We note also the important role played by MINURSO in supporting the Personal Envoy to achieve a mutually acceptable solution and support its mandate extension through October 2026. We are also thankful for the Council's constructive engagement, and I personally thank everyone here who has engaged in this draft, that we've made a sustained effort, we've made a genuine effort to incorporate everyone's proposals, and they were quite numerous from across the Council. The United States is resolute. President Trump is resolute in his support for peace. We are deeply committed to supporting a mutually acceptable solution in the Western Sahara, and we are deeply committed to resolving this issue, this long-standing issue. We urge all parties to use the coming weeks to come to the table and engage in serious discussions using Morocco's credible and realistic autonomy proposal as the only basis for a just and lasting solution to the dispute. And we believe regional peace is possible this year, and we will make every effort to facilitate progress towards this shared goal of peace and prosperity for the people of Western Sahara. Thank you, Mr. President.
Я благодарю представителя Соединенных Штатов за его выступление. Сейчас предоставляю слово представителю Алжира.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, my country did not participate in the vote on this draft resolution. For the renewal of the United Nations mission, for the organization of a referendum in Western Sahara. through that absence and acting fully responsibly, Algeria wanted to illustrate the distance that we put between ourselves and a text which does not faithfully reflect, does not sufficiently reflect the UN doctrine with regard to decolonization. It's the implementation of that doctrine that has made it possible for a number of countries to be represented here amongst us in the United Nations organization. Do we need to even recall this? The final decision on the future cannot, must not belong to anyone other than the people under colonial domination. And in that regard, allow me to quote here President Woodrow Wilson of the United States of America, who stated, and I'll quote this in English,
Peoples are not to be handed about from one sovereignty to another by an international conference or an understanding between rivals and antagonists. National aspiration must be respected. Peoples may now be dominated and governed only by their own consent. Self-determination is not a mere phrase. It is an imperative principle of action. Je vous invite tous.
I would invite you all of you, to think deeply about what was said in that statement. Mr. President, as a neighboring country of the main actors in Western Sahara, Algeria has engaged in good faith and in a constructive spirit in the negotiation of the text that was put forward. And I'd like here, at this meeting, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the penholder, the United States, who, contrary to what happened last year, spared no effort to improve the text and to find a compromise between the parties involved. A compromise which would have been able to bring together all of the members of the Council. Of course, and we recognize this openly, substantial improvements were made to the initial text. First of all, by recalling the fundamental parameters of a just and lasting solution to the conflict in Western Sahara. And then, enshrining the inalienable right of the people of Western Sahara to self-determination. And finally, by engaging the two parties, the Kingdom of Morocco and the Polisario Front, in good faith negotiations without preconditions under the aegis of the United Nations. But unfortunately, the text which was finally submitted still has a number of shortcomings. It is below, I say, the expectations and the legitimate aspirations of the people of Western Sahara, represented by the Polisario Front. This people, who for more than 50 years have resisted in order to have their own say in their own future. So what is lacking in this text? Although the goal is commonly shared, namely to find a lasting, just and mutually acceptable solution that would provide the right to the people of Western Sahara to self-determination, the way in which this achieved, let me underscore, the way in which this is to be achieved raises legitimate questions. The complicated framework for the proposed negotiation, which puts one option ahead of others, prevents creativity and the flexibility that are necessary to be deployed in order to reach an agreement freely entered into in accordance with the United Nations doctrine in matters of decolonization. Moreover, this text creates an imbalance between the two parties to the conflict by stressing simply the territorial ambitions of one party and saying nothing about the aspirations of the other party, that party being the Sahrawi people who are demanding their freedom. The proof of this is that this text ignores the proposals of the Polisario Front, which nevertheless were recently passed on to the United Nations Secretary General and to the Security Council, and which were published under document number S/2025/664. They are a party to the conflict, and their opinion must be heard, if not taken into consideration. Finally, this text raises, and here I really want you to tune into what I'm saying, this text raises legal questions, serious, legitimate questions with regard to the legal foundation for the negotiating framework being proposed in order to resolve the Western Saharan conflict. Just think for a moment that this framework were to be reproduced, replicated in other conflict zones, in Europe, in the Americas, in Asia, in Africa. And it is one of the main, and if it were to be one of the main pillars of the international order that were to be dangerously divided. Mr. President, we certainly did need to have a final effort, an effort both necessary and important, but with greater flexibility, creativity and diplomacy, if we were to have arrived at a successful outcome to the negotiation of this resolution. This situation would have made it possible to launch in short order a dynamic political process on a solid foundation by including all stakeholders, all parties involved, with the final goal of once and for all the decolonization of Western Sahara according to the United Nations Charter. I deplore the fact that the penholder, despite all their efforts, were not able to overcome resistance, and you all know what resistance that is, in order to make the changes necessary and make the text acceptable to everyone. We missed a chance here, and we regret this. And we regret that President Trump's initiative to bring peace and détente to our region, an initiative which raised hope and interest, an initiative that is not able to properly get off the ground with the active support of all parties involved. Indeed, this resolution does not, well, still not, create the necessary momentum and conditions for it to be successful. A success where everyone is a winner. A success that does not leave any winner or loser. To conclude, Mr. President, a just and lasting solution can only come about in the presence of the respect for the inalienable right of the people of Western Sahara to decide on their own future. This is the only guarantee of genuine peace and of lasting stability in the region. And Algeria, in the way we have proceeded, and I'd like to reaffirm it here, and please all be my witness, Algeria remains faithful to the principle of the Pacific settlement of disputes. We remain faithful to the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter. Algeria will always be ready, let me repeat that, will always be ready to commit in full sovereignty, responsibly, and demonstrating creativity, will always be ready for any negotiation which will scrupulously respect the cardinal principles of equity, impartiality, and justice. Justice, with a view to a lasting solution to the question of Western Sahara. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, let me firstly congratulate you and the Russian Federation for the efficient and professional way you've handled the affairs of the Security Council in the month of October 2025 and for your successful presidency. Mr. President, Sierra Leone welcomes the efforts of the United States, not only in facilitating the draft resolution that has been adopted as Resolution 2797, but also in their willingness to take on board a broad range of views submitted by member states. We also thank Council members for their constructive engagement in the process. Sierra Leone voted in favor of Resolution 2797, renewing the mandate of MINURSO, firstly, to indicate our support for the mission and to acknowledge its critical role in maintaining stability and calm, conditions necessary to advance the political process. We are of the view that the resolution adopted will bring new impetus that will inspire the parties to build on existing international momentum to accelerate the resolution of this long-standing situation and political process. I reaffirm Sierra Leone's unwavering support for the ongoing UN-led political process under the auspices of the Secretary General and facilitated by his personal envoy, Mr. Stefan de Mistura. We recognize the efforts of the personal envoy to advance the political process and urge all parties to engage in good faith to reach a realistic, practicable, and mutually acceptable political solution based on compromise. Our vote also indicates our support for the Moroccan Autonomy initiative, which conforms with international law and the principle of self-determination, which can be actualized in various forms on a case-by-case basis as recognized by the United Nations General Assembly. This Council has considered the Moroccan Autonomy initiative as a credible and realistic approach to moving the process forward since its submission in 2007. We note the international momentum in support of the Moroccan Autonomy initiative and share the view that it is time to explore this option as a path towards an acceptable political solution. We consider it as feasible because it does not exclude dialogue or impose an outcome. Rather, it provides a structured, flexible basis for discussion and remains open to negotiation, noting particularly paragraph 2 of the adopted resolution 2797. We urge the parties to restore the ceasefire without delay in order to preserve the conditions necessary for the resumption of the political process. In closing, Mr. President, as we welcome the adoption of today's resolution, we underscore the need to resume the roundtable process with the full participation of all concerned parties. We welcome Morocco's commitment at the highest political level to achieve a consensual solution, and I quote, a solution with neither winner or loser, end of quote, and I thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for his statement, and now give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, President. For many years now, MINURSO, through careful implementation of its mandate as entrusted by the Council, has made positive contributions in such areas as ceasefire monitoring, mine clearance, and civilian protection, thereby creating favorable conditions for a political settlement. China supports the extension of MINURSO's mandate for 1 year and hopes that all relevant parties will continue to strengthen engagement and cooperation with the mission to ensure its mandate implementation. During consultations on the draft resolution, a number of Council members, including China, offered many constructive inputs, hoping to produce a text that is more balanced and fair, one that respects the legitimate concerns of all parties involved in the Western Sahara issue and those of all Council members. Regrettably, the resolution failed to adequately balance and take on board the concerns of all parties and does not objectively reflect all the proposals. Therefore, China had to abstain from the vote. We hope that going forward, the pen holder will constructively facilitate thorough consultations within the Council and strive to achieve a broader consensus. President, China's position on the Western Sahara issue is consistent and clear. We hold that a political solution is the fundamental way out. The United Nations is the main channel, and relevant Security Council resolutions are an important basis. Dialogue and negotiation are the right approach. China looks forward to seeing the parties concerned reach a just, lasting, and mutually acceptable political solution through equal-footed consultations, thus ensuring that the people of Western Sahara will exercise self-determination under arrangements consistent with the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. China expects the SG's personal envoy to continue stepping up his good offices so as to translate the current positive momentum into tangible diplomatic outcomes and promote further progress in the political process. Thank you.
I thank the representative of China for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Slovenia.
Thank you, Mr. President. We also thank the US as pen holder and all Council members for the constructive engagement during negotiations. President, Slovenia voted in favor of the resolution presented today. We did so because of our steadfast support for MINURSO and for the role of the United Nations. We believe that MINURSO is a critical stabilizing and monitoring presence, and we welcome that its mandate has been renewed for 1 year. We also supported the text as we see there is a need and an opportunity for real progress towards a just, lasting, and mutually acceptable solution as we fast approach the 50th anniversary of the conflict. We welcome all efforts to bring the parties together, to kickstart this process, which should take place on an equal footing and take into account the positions and proposals of all parties. Going forward, we offer our full support to Personal Envoy de Mistura, as well as Special Representative Ivanko, and to all key actors who aim to drive discussions forward, and finally deliver peace, stability, and prosperity for the region and for its people. President, when it comes to the question of Western Sahara, Slovenia's position remains unchanged. That is, support for a just, lasting, and mutually acceptable political solution which provides for the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara. The right to self-determination, put simply, the freedom to choose for oneself, is enshrined in the UN Charter. It is a right that cannot be taken from any people, not by the Security Council and not by the member states. We welcome that this right is clearly recognized and guaranteed in today's resolution. We are also clear that we do not interpret the text adopted today as taking any decision regarding the question of sovereignty. My delegation continues to view Western Sahara as a non-self-governing territory. President, we had hoped that this renewal could achieve consensus, thus setting up future talks for the best possible success. We appreciate that throughout the course of negotiations, the text continued to evolve and to improve, and that some concerns were accommodated, albeit in the end, not to the extent that it reflected the totality of members' positions. While a consensual adoption has not been the case, we hope in earnest that progress on the political track can still be achieved. We encourage all parties to engage in good faith and with open minds, and to put forward all ideas and suggestions to support a final, mutually acceptable solution. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Slovenia for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the United States as the penholder for its effort in preparing a resolution and leading the consultations. The Republic of Korea voted in favor of the resolution renewing the mandate of MINURSO. As a troop-contributing country to MINURSO since 2009, our support for this resolution primarily stems from our belief in the importance of maintaining MINURSO's operation, which plays a vital role in promoting peace and security in the region. At the same time, we recognize the diverse views on the political aspect of the question of Western Sahara. The Republic of Korea's position remains unchanged. The issue should be resolved through a just, lasting, and mutually acceptable political solution through dialogue among the parties within the framework of the United Nations. We hope that this resolution will encourage the parties to promptly engage in good faith negotiations. As repeatedly emphasized by Council members during our consultations, this resolution should not be interpreted as prejudging the outcome of such negotiations. The Republic of Korea will continue to engage constructively in supporting the people of Western Sahara in their pursuit of genuine peace and lasting prosperity. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Republic of Korea for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
President, Pakistan abstained in the vote on this resolution. Our vote reflects Pakistan's principled and long-standing position on the question of Western Sahara. Our position on this issue has all along been based on the resolutions of the Security Council itself that have been adopted over the years. This position, however, was not adequately reflected in the resolution that was currently before the Council and which contains certain fundamental changes as compared to previous iterations. We acknowledge the continued efforts and leadership of the United States in striving to achieve a resolution to this long-standing dispute. Pakistan also attaches great importance to its early settlement, particularly as the matter involves friends with whom we share deep historic and fraternal ties. Pakistan's position has remained clear and consistent. We support a just, lasting, and mutually acceptable political solution without preconditions that guarantees the realization of the right to self-determination and takes on board the positions of all parties in conformity with relevant Security Council resolutions and the recommendations of the UN Secretary General and his personal envoy. This resolution, however, does not fully address these important principles, which remain vital to facilitating a mutually acceptable solution. For us, the cardinal principle of self-determination, enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations and grounded in international law, is and will always remain sacrosanct and inviolable. It constitutes the very foundation of the post-Second World War UN Charter-based international law. President, we recognize that efforts were made incrementally over 3 rounds of drafting during the short period of 1 week to refine the text for accommodating various concerns. However, these changes could not alter its fundamental substance or imbalance. The underlying principle that the people of Western Sahara must determine their own future through the expression of their will has been consistently reaffirmed by the United Nations. Throughout the negotiations process, we consistently advocated for an approach that would garner consensus, bridge divides, and uphold fairness. It is our firm belief that for any peace effort to succeed, all relevant parties must be brought to the table for a truly mutually acceptable outcome. The final text, regrettably, did not reflect such an approach. In conclusion, we hope all concerned parties would engage in negotiations in a spirit of inclusivity and good faith, without any preconditions, ensuring that any future process genuinely reflects the aspirations of the people of Western Sahara and commands the confidence of all stakeholders. In our view, only such an approach can deliver a just and enduring peaceful settlement, one that lays the foundation for sustainable peace and stability across the Maghreb and the wider Sahel region. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Mr. President, Denmark voted in favor of extending the mandate of MINURSO. We have done so in recognition of MINURSO's important role and the 12-month extension. The Secretary General has emphasized how nearly 5 years have elapsed since the resumption of hostilities, which continues to expose an increasing risk of escalation and to detract from the stability in the broader Maghreb region. Reliable monitoring, investigation, and independent reporting is much needed in this context. To that end, MINURSO plays an important role. As we work to revive the political process, which has been frozen for far too long, MINURSO's presence on the ground also serves as a critical enabler in support of the personal envoy's mediation efforts. Mr. President, let me reaffirm our full support for the United Nations-led process and the Secretary-General's personal envoy for the Western Sahara, Mr. de Mistura, and his efforts to reach a peaceful and mutually acceptable solution to the conflict in accordance with the UN Security Council resolutions. Denmark, in this regard, considers the Autonomy plan presented by Morocco in 2007 as a serious and credible contribution to the UN process and as a good basis for a solution agreed upon between the parties. Our vote in favor of today's resolution does not constitute a recognition of Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara, as any solution should be agreed among the parties in accordance with the UN Charter and principles, including the right to self-determination. We wish to thank the penholder of the resolution for the flexibility shown in the negotiation process, albeit the presented parameters for the political process could have been even more balanced. We also wish to thank all those engaged in trying to resolve this conflict for their efforts. We urge the parties to the conflict to engage constructively and in good faith in the negotiations with a view to achieving a mutually accepted solution. Now, we must spare no effort in our pursuit of a peaceful resolution to the conflict. After 50 years of suffering and division, this is not only necessary, it is long overdue. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark for her statement. I'll now give the floor to the representative of Guyana.
Thank you, Mr. President. Guyana welcomes the renewal of MINURSO's mandate for an additional year. MINURSO's continued presence is critical to preserving peace and stability in Western Sahara and preventing further escalation of hostilities. The mission's monitoring, investigating, and liaison with the parties also makes it the main source of impartial information for the UN, the Secretary-General, and the Security Council on developments in and related to the territory. Its stabilizing presence is needed at this crucial time in the political process. Guyana also emphasizes the importance of the parties respecting the ceasefire, as stated in the resolution just adopted. We thank the United States for the transparent conduct of the negotiations and their efforts to improve the text, and indeed to move the political process forward. Guyana hopes that, following the adoption of this resolution, the two sides would show the necessary good faith in the negotiations and cooperate fully with the Secretary-General, his personal envoy, MINURSO, and with each other, and demonstrate the necessary political will towards achieving a just, lasting, and mutually acceptable political settlement, one that provides for the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara. We express our full support to the Secretary-General and his personal envoy in facilitating engagements with the two parties and encourage neighboring and other interested countries to provide constructive support. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Guyana for her statement and now give the floor to the representative of France.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, France welcomes the adoption of the resolution which renews for 12 months the mandate of MINURSO. This resolution is the result of an open process which allowed for numerous contacts with members of this council, and we thank the U.S. penholder for the efforts they made toward a balanced text that takes into account requests made by various delegations. Now, given the prolonged nature of the conflict in Western Sahara and its consequences on the population, today the Council has decided to act. It gives a clear mandate to the personal envoy, Mr. Staffan de Mistura, whom we thank for the efforts he has made, a clear mandate to revive an inclusive political process. With the support of the Security Council, we call on all parties to engage now in negotiations so as to write a new chapter for the Western Sahara and for the entire region. And this chapter must meet the legitimate aspirations of the populations of the people to live in peace. Mr. President, for France, The present and future of Western Sahara lie within the framework of Moroccan sovereignty. Our support for the autonomy under Moroccan sovereignty proposed in 2007 is clear and unwavering. Autonomy under Moroccan sovereignty is the only framework to arrive at a political solution which is just, lasting, and negotiated in accordance with the resolutions passed by this Council. An international consensus is also increasingly broad in this direction. It is important for the Council to seize this momentum, as it now does with this resolution, and this is a collective success. France believes that a mutually acceptable political solution is possible. The political momentum is there. It is now time to move forward with it, and that is why the personal envoy is called upon to bring together all parties very soon with a view to reaching a definitive settlement of the conflict, and we offer him again our full support. Through this resolution, the Council endorses a new approach which, under the auspices of the United Nations and abiding by the principles of the Charter, will allow the parties to engage in a new effort towards peace, and we urge them to seize this opportunity resolutely. And finally, thanks to the resolution we have just adopted, MINURSO, whose work we welcome, will be able to continue playing a key role in the stability of the region. And on the ground, France calls for a cessation of hostilities and a full return to respect of the ceasefire, as we must not forget the risks that the conflict poses to the populations. The strategic review requested by the Council is a useful tool to structure discussions on the future of MINURSO, and that future will be determined by progress towards political solution, which we all very much hope for. Mr. President, this resolution outlines a horizon of peace. Let us support the personal envoy and the parties so that with courage and determination they may together launch negotiations that will end a conflict that has lasted far too long for the benefit of the populations and countries of the region. I thank you. I thank the representative of France for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Gracias.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would like to thank the United States as the penholder of this resolution for their efforts in advancing the political process and for your flexible position during the drafting of the resolution, trying as far as you could to reconcile positions to improve it. Panama has voted in favor of this resolution because we consider it to be a balanced and constructive step forward towards strengthening efforts to achieve a political, peaceful, lasting, and mutually acceptable solution to the question of Western Sahara. Panama reaffirms its commitment to the fundamental principles of the United Nations Charter, to international law, and to multilateralism. These principles guide our diplomatic action and reflect our values: the defense of sovereignty, mutual respect among states, and, in particular, the right of peoples to self-determination. As a country that has lived through its own history of struggle to exercise that right, Panama very much understands what it means for a people to be able to determine their own destiny. Panama recognizes the efforts of Morocco and considers that the autonomy plan presented in 2007 constitutes a viable basis for advancing towards a lasting solution. We reaffirm that any solution must be founded on dialogue, commitment, and respect for the principles of international law. Panama calls upon all parties, Morocco, the Polisario Front, and the neighboring states, to resume negotiations in good faith under the auspices of the personal envoy of the Secretary-General of the United Nations. We value the work of the United Nations Mission for the Referendum in Western Sahara as a stabilizing presence and a neutral mechanism for monitoring the ceasefire. Its work continues to be essential for maintaining stable conditions on the ground and creating the necessary environment for the advancement of the political dialogue. In this regard, We welcome that this resolution renews the mandate of MINURSO for 1 year, a period of time that we have supported in line with the recommendations of the Secretary-General and his personal envoy. Mr. President, we believe that this period offers a broader time frame in order to consolidate progress, to strengthen the mission's presence, and foster a sustained political process which this Council must continue to monitor. Finally, Panama reiterates its support for the mission as well as its commitment to continue working constructively with the members of this Council and with all stakeholders in favor of a just, lasting and mutually acceptable peace based on dialogue, cooperation and respect for the principle of self-determination. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Panama for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the long-standing question of Western Sahara, there appears to be today renewed international efforts for its resolution. In this context, the resolution just adopted can prove to be a significant turning point. In it, the Council importantly reaffirms its commitment to assist the parties to achieve a just, lasting and mutually acceptable political solution within the framework of international law, one which is achieved upon negotiations based on compromise and consistent with the principles and purposes of the UN Charter. It expresses also its support to the Secretary-General and his personal envoy to advance the political process and implement its resolutions. And it notes the support of the Council to a mutually acceptable negotiated solution to the dispute, taking also into account the rights of the Sahrawi people as reflected in the relevant resolutions. Greece welcomes the role of the United States in undertaking a leadership role and for drafting this text. We also commend all sides for choosing diplomacy and engagement at the present stage and call for this spirit to be maintained during the political and negotiating process that will ensue, encompassing also other constructive proposals submitted by the sides. If it is to be viable, any outcome needs to be the product of genuine negotiations. 4. Agreements are only as effective as their implementation. We hope that this resolution will generate a positive momentum towards achieving lasting peace in the region. MINURSO's stabilizing and peacekeeping role is critical in this context. We therefore welcome the extension of its mandate for 12 months. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Somalia voted to renew MINURSO's mandate for 1 year. It's a reflection of our commitment to a peaceful and negotiated solution to the Western Sahara issue under UN auspices. We commend the penholder, the United States, for the constructive engagement and stewardship throughout the deliberations. Somalia reaffirms its long-standing support for a just, lasting, and mutually acceptable political solution in accordance with relevant Security Council resolutions and consistent with the principles of the UN Charter. We underscore the necessity of an inclusive and credible political process conducted in good faith and express our full support for the Secretary-General and his personal envoy. Their efforts to facilitate direct and substantive talks remain vital, and we encourage all stakeholders to engage in a spirit of genuine compromise and mutual respect. Somalia calls on all parties to uphold their obligation under the ceasefire agreement and encourage member states to continue to provide appropriate support to the United Nations endeavors to this end. In conclusion, Mr. President, our delegation look forward to the Secretary General's forthcoming strategic review on the future of MINURSO, which is informed by the outcome of the resumed negotiations. We hope that renewed diplomatic momentum will translate into tangible progress towards a just, lasting, and a peaceful settlement to the situation concerning Western Sahara. Somalia reaffirms its readiness to support all efforts in that regard. I thank you.
Я благодарю представителя.
I thank the representative of Somalia for its statement. I shall now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. The United Kingdom welcomes the adoption of this resolution. We welcome US leadership on the text, which represents a step towards a just and lasting political solution that provides for the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara. This is the start of the process to find a mutually acceptable solution, not the end. We commend the work of Personal Envoy de Mistura. Through his facilitation, we hope to see a new chapter in the political process. We urge the parties to engage in good faith and in the spirit of compromise with negotiations under his auspices. We welcome that this resolution highlights Morocco's 2007 autonomy proposal, which the UK considers the most credible, viable, and pragmatic basis for a solution. We look forward to seeing Morocco's efforts to expand upon the proposal, as well as the constructive suggestions from the parties in response. We also look forward to receiving the strategic review of MINURSO and supporting MINURSO's evolution, aligned with the political process. Now is the time to settle this 50-year conflict. The UK is committed to continuing working closely with the parties over the coming year to achieve this end. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for his statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the Russian Federation. Russia abstained on voting on the American draft of the Security Council resolution to extend the MINURSO mandate. We were unable to support such an unbalanced text. We're also surprised by the approach of the penholders who decided to use the Security Council in order to push forward their national position. This is a drastic departure with a practice in the Council, according to which there has to be a diligent search by the penholders of a consensus with taking into account the positions of all members. It is indicative that for the second year in a row, our American colleagues do not dare to have a detailed discussion of Western Sahara text in full council. The group of friends of Western Sahara is not something that we take into account here, because in the light of reviewed national positions by all members therein, it became a platform for an imbalanced collective monologue. As an outcome of this, one of the delegations had to, on their own, request that the draft be discussed in full councils, which shows that there are serious shortcomings on the part of the penholders, who made work on this document far too abridged and politicized. There is, however, a certain desire to show compromise recently, and this was what allowed us to have a positive outcome of the voting. For us, this document is a departure from the basis we have at the UN on the issue of Western Sahara settlement. This basis never went away, and its bases are not to be reviewed. Russia decided not to block the Council decision to extend the mission, MINURSO, and this was in order to give yet another chance to the peace process. At the same time, we very much want to believe that the cowboy charge by our American colleagues will not produce the opposite effect and will not unfreeze the conflict which has been smoldering for several decades. We expect that the personal envoy, Staffan de Mistura, will do everything possible to make sure that under new conditions, the parties involved reach a mutually acceptable decision as quickly as possible, which will enable the Western Sahara people to freely realize their inalienable right to self-determination. Such a decision should be in line with the principles of the UN Charter and be in line with the earlier decisions passed by the Security Council on Western Sahara. This is the only scenario that could exist. Resume my function as President of the Security Council. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. This meeting is adjourned.
Anyway, we have one more hurdle to get over.